Erin and I want to start with a really big, heartfelt first bite thank you. We have been so encouraged by your kind word, your messages, your glowing reviews of First Bite. This has been a labor of love for the last year and a half, and we are grateful for y'all being on the First Bite journey with us and supporting us because we work full time and this is a full-time gig on top of it. And we do it with joy because we understand that the world of early intervention pediatrics needs evidence in it. So we sweet talked the folks with speechtherapypd.com, and as a thank you giveaway, we have come up with a free pod course subscription. So once we hit 130 iTunes written reviews, we're going to pull another name out of the hat, probably with the assistance of an ever so handsome goose and a bear. And that person will get a free pod course subscription. So over 175 hours of continuing ed plus 19 new continuing hours each month. And there's a new episode every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, every other Thursday, and the short course, 9 series long, All Things Ethics with Elise. And that's our way of giving back. So thank you. So please keep the reviews coming. We only have a few more to go, but once we hit 130, then we will pull that name out of a hat. Happy 2020. Thank you for joining us on the journey. And seriously, y'all rock. Thank you. Hey, so by now, I'm hoping that you've heard about the brand new pod course subscription that Speech Therapy PD has rolled out. For $79 a month, you get over 175 hours of ASHA continuing education with 19 new episodes a month. That's fantastic. Well, they want to make sure that you also know we have a brand new coupon code. So the coupon code is F as in first, B as in bite, followed by the number 20, FB20. And that brand new coupon code will give you $20 off the pod course subscription. So you get 175 hours of continuing ed plus an average of 19 new hours a month, all for $59 a year. And we cover everything from early intervention to schools to adults to ethics. So be sure to type in F as in first, B as in bite, and then the number's 20. Enjoy your coupon, or as my kinfolk say, enjoy that coupon.
Hey there, listener. This is Dr. Dakota Sharp, audiologist, clinical assistant professor, and lifelong learner, inviting you to join me on an exciting new podcasting journey known as On the Ear. As you know, audiology is ever evolving, so it's critical as professionals that we learn and grow as well. Every other Thursday, On the Ear will be interviewing a variety of clinicians and researchers spanning a wide range of hearing and communication topics. From pediatrics to geriatrics, cochlear implants to vestibular, speech to hearing, and everything in between, this podcast will provide exciting insights that you can use in your clinical practice. Each episode of On the Ear is available for 0.1 ASHA CEUs when you complete the accompanying pod course through speechtherapypd.com.
Hi, folks, and welcome to First Bite, Fed, Fun, and Functional, a speech therapy podcast sponsored by SpeechTherapyPD.com. I am your host on this nerd venture, Michelle Dawson, MS, CCC, SLP, CLC, the All Things Peds SLP. I am a colleague in the trenches of home health early intervention right there with you. I run my own private practice, Heartwood Speech Therapy, here in Coletown, South Carolina. And I guest lecture nationwide on best practices for early intervention for the medically complex and fragile child. First Bite's mission is short and sweet, to bring light, hope, knowledge, and joy to the pediatric clinician, parent, or advocate.
By way of a nerdy conversation, so there's plenty of laughter too.
In this podcast, we cover everything from AAC to breastfeeding,
ethics on how to run a private practice,
pediatric dysphagia to clinical supervision,
and all other topics in the world of pediatric speech pathology. Our goal is to bring evidence-based practice straight to you by interviewing subject matter experts.
To break down the communication barriers so that we can access the knowledge of their fields.
Or, as a close friend says, to build the bridge.
By bringing other professionals and experts in our field together, we hope to spark advocacy, joy, and passion for continuing to grow and advance care for our little ones.
Every fourth episode, I join in. I'm Erin Forward, MSP, CCC SLP, the Yankee by way of Rochester, New York transplant who actually inspired this journey. I bring a different perspective, that of a newish clinician with experience in early intervention, pediatric acute care, and nonprofit pediatric outpatient settings.
So sit back, relax, and watch out for all our squirrels and enjoy this geeky gig brought to you by SpeechTherapyPD.com. Okay, so today's guest I am totally geeking out about because tonight First Bite gets the privilege and honor of hosting Dr. Marion Russell, OT, and feeding tube weaning extraordinaire. Y'all, my face hurts from smiling so hard, so I hope y'all can feel this. All right, so this feeding therapist guru hails from none other than the world's premier feeding tube clinic in Austria. Now, once upon a time, pre-Goose and Bear, I dreamed about going to Austria and learning from them firsthand. But y'all, the babies happened, and here we are 7 years later, and it's still a dream that I haven't been able to chase down just yet. But you gotta love a good yet, right? So imagine my fangirl awe when I saw that she was the presenter for Feeding Matters this past January. I emailed her instantly and she is phenomenal. And I can't believe she said yes. And folks, guess what? She has relocated to the States and is actually in the process of raising awareness about the feeding tube dependency program and how you can participate in it from here. So, can we get a collective round of applause and an evidence-based practice sigh of relief? Hooray! Okay, so Dr. Marion, thank you for coming on and hi and welcome to America and hi.
Well, hello, and thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so I have like 400 different questions and I know we have like to stick to like our like assigned questions, but also one, how did you become an OT? And then how did you get into the world of feeding tube dependency? And then my gosh, what brought you to America? Can you
Well,
start there?
that alone will fill an hour, but I'm trying to keep it short. OT kind of interesting. I came through it kind of the back door. So I have an undergrad in English literature actually, and wanted to be an English professor. And then I was like, nah, not for me. I want to work with people. And so I took like the passion for narrative and stories. And I was like, wow, you can meet them right here as an OT. So that kind of got me going. And I just absolutely loved it. And this is my home. This is where I need to be. And I've always wanted to work with individuals with eating disorders. And there just wasn't a lot of programs available. And then I started working in pediatrics and it's like, hey, I can combine this. And that's kind of, I felt like this is a place where I need to be. I love to be with the parents and kind of hear their stories. And there, the whole narrative idea comes right back into it, right? So my English lit degree comes in handy every time, kind of the appreciation of the families and the kids. And yeah, so that's kind of how I got there.
Okay, so you did your stud you're from Germany,
Yes,
then you studied in Canada.
right. Montreal. Yep.
Yes, and then went back to okay, so Christian and that's my husband, we planned on either going to Montreal for our honeymoon or DC, and we're super nerdy, so we went to DC so we could go to all the museums.
Well, you missed out. No,
And that's what my
Montreal
mother
is still there. It's still there. You got to go. You got to go. It's beautiful, beautiful place.
we'll go when we're yeah, that's on the to-do list, but I don't think Canada wants us right now because of
Yeah,
COVID.
you might have to wait a little bit. You might have to wait a little bit.
Oh my stars. We've already detoured so far
Yep,
out of the this is great.
we
Okay.
did.
So,
Okay,
so
focus,
you
focus.
you became an OT specializing in feeding therapy, but How did that lead to you being part of this amazing feeding tube dependency clinic?
That's a great question. So when I started working as a feeding therapist, got certified through AOTA and all those things, then I decided to go back to school and get my doctorate. And part of the doctoral program was a residency requirement. And I knew I had read everything about this feeding clinic in Austria and Dr. Dunitz Scher and all her work. I'm like, I got to meet
Yes.
this woman. I got to meet this woman. And I
Yes.
happened to go back to Germany. So I was like, hey, that's convenient. So I sent an email and I went there and I was there for 2 weeks. And I didn't have an OT on the team. And after I was there for 2 weeks, there's like, well, we need an OT on the team. So, and I stayed. I stayed. So that's, yeah, I'm still, very active. I work with them. I do all the telehealth pieces. I used to be on the ground in the clinic. So I'm doing two things, but yeah, I just stayed. I was like, yeah, I need to be here. This is a wonderful place to be.
That is absolutely
Mhm.
amazing. See, I sent the email. I literally sent the email and was like, I would love it if I could come. And then we found out I was pregnant. And I mean, I was
Yep.
basically told you'll never get pregnant. So I was like, pursue a career. And then ta da! It turns out St. Patrick's Day is an excellent day.
Fabulous.
So,
It's a
like,
great day.
it's a
We
great
have good
day.
memories.
Yes. Oh, my stars. Oh, you make my heart happy. Okay. So you do this, and this is really hard for a lot of people to wrap their brains
Yeah.
around. And it was really hard for me to initially wrap my brain around that
Mhm.
there's a possibility to do feeding tube weaning, especially for our kids that have feeding tube dependency
Right, right.
via telehealth. I mean,
Yep.
that seems so surreal. And and then I have families that go to the extreme and then they take on their own
Mm.
notions of, well, I'm going to get rid of this tube, and then they go to do it themselves. So
Yeah, we
what
see those
what
families too
yeah,
that come in.
I
Mhm.
bet you do. So what does it look like to be part of a feeding tube weaning clinic, and then what does it look like to be a part of that via telehealth?
hmm So the good thing is, I think that you're not alone, right? So as a parent, even though it's like virtual, yeah, kind of you walk through a virtual door and there's a team awaiting you. So there's an assessment, so the medical team looks at it. You have a pediatrician, a medical psychologist, and then either a PT or an OT on your treatment team. And those three people, they are there every single day, 24/7. So you have access to them. And that's kind of the beauty because you stay in your home. But I always say, like, when you decide to go with a program, it's almost like I'm moving in with you for a couple of months, depending how long it takes. So I'm going to be at the table with you virtually. I'm going to be, talking to you on the weekends. We are always, it's like 24/7, we're always there. And I think we help parents to see that kind of their strengths too in the process, and we guide them in a way that they get encouraged and empowered. So a lot is done via the parents because, as you said, telehealth, I can't touch the child, right? So we really rely on the parents and on the therapy team that is local to kind of support that process. And it only works as a team.
Yes. That's There's a huge push here in the States for routines based early intervention with emphasis on family coaching, right? And
Exactly. Yep.
yes, yes. And it's really hard. It's really hard as a speech path. I mean, we are taught how to do direct therapy. I mean, well, let me rephrase that. Those of us with gray hair were taught how to do direct service delivery model,
Mhm,
right? Like
mhm.
that's what we were taught was best practice. But now the data the data is showing that by engaging in family coaching and giving the family the power to do this themselves, they have buy-in on it, and then they take it, they run with it, and that has such more positive
Yeah.
outcomes. Yes.
Yes. Yes, and I think what we do too is like we walk into a situation where you want to have the family at a place where they don't need you anymore. It sounds strange, but you want to really empower them that they can walk the rest of the way on their own, right? And so we also, I mean, and the families, when we see them, they're so used to getting medical and expert advice and opinion. They're just so like, tell me what to do, tell me what to do. And we're like, well, what are you already doing? Like, what are the routines you already have in place that we can build on? Because it's so much better than creating all those new ones. And, your life also needs to happen still. It's just, yeah, it's a complicated process, especially when you come from like very hands on. And then you have to just, you're a guide. And I think we also empower the children. We do work with the kids by giving them the autonomy. That's very big in our program, is to really bringing back the child autonomy, and that's another learning process for the parents to let that happen.
Okay, so like I have so many questions. Okay, one, this I you have no idea how much of a fan I have been of this program and this protocol because it okay, y'all, I can't how many times have you heard me say that children are not behavioral feeding disorders? This is not what you're dealing with. 2 to 3% of PFDs actually have a behavioral feeding disorder component. And we as clinicians don't necessarily hold the skill set. That diagnosis has to come through a clinical psychologist or psychiatrist, right? But for for these cases, we have to get the child to a point of medical stability and healing, and then once they're there, then we can work with assessing the hunger cues. And from what I've gathered, and please correct me if I'm wrong, from what I've gathered, y'all do not engage in chewy tubes or Z vibes or anything of the
Yeah,
sort because it's non-evidence based practice. You actually
yeah.
do functional
Yeah,
therapy.
yeah. We do say like, you know what? If you're eating, just use food. So we definitely do take
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah, use the food. Don't have them chew on rubber. I mean, there's probably people out there. I apologize if I'm being too open, but it's just, it's so and
Thank you. Thank you. Oh my God. If you were here, I would hug you. I mean, with the mask on and
of course,
gloves
of
and like
course,
a
of
bubble
course. I
between us,
know,
I would
but
hug
it's
you.
so hard because I spend a lot of time, especially at the beginning, because parents come. It's like, where's my exercise program? What am I supposed to do with the things I have at home? I have this whole box here, and I'm like,
Mhm.
you know what? Why don't you just
Throw it
put
away.
it, yeah, get rid of it. I don't know, get rid of it. We don't need it. And then we say, oh, those are the foods you can offer, and what we do, we kind of take the cue from the table away. For example, we say, let's go on the floor. We call it play picnic. We get messy. You take your socks off and you just go right in there. You bring your puree to the floor, and there's no shame about that. You get dirty, perfect. And training, not training, like helping parents understand that eating is a complex process, but you also have to have fun. You
Yes.
shouldn't be work. It's hard work by itself to sit up and keep yourself up straight. That's a lot of work. But you got to get the fun back, and the parents need to get the fun back. I think that is what we focused on too. Is like, how can you be playful as a caregiver? Because you've been through, I mean, so much. The stories we hear, right, at this point, and I get
Yeah.
it's just wow. So let's see how we can bring you back to the table or to the floor, as a unit, and have fun and yeah, create some space.
You help them find meal joy at mealtime.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and
definitely.
that's hard. Okay. So my next question is I have I struggle here in South Carolina convincing physicians that when a child has met their metabolic and caloric needs via oral and tube, that we really need to critically reassess the volume through the tube such that we can start cutting that down because this is the analogy that I give and that I have found that works really well. has anyone out there ever gone on a cruise? Dr. Marion, have you ever gone on a cruise?
I have not gone on a
Okay.
cruise, but I
Um,
know people who have. I can
yes.
totally follow you there.
Yes, yes. Okay, so they do this thing on a cruise called the midnight buffet, right? And like we don't
Mhm.
eat at midnight, we're asleep at midnight. But when you're on a cruise, you wake up and you go down to the midnight buffet because it's like a big to do, right? And
Yeah.
you eat like when they tell you to because it's regimented, right? And now my mom keeps trying to convince me they have freestyle cruising now. Well, I rephrase that. They had freestyle cruising 6 months ago. I don't really know if that's still a thing now. But
Yeah.
yeah, and but you eat on like a regimented time.
Mhm.
You always feel full, right?
Yes.
And so if you're middle aged like myself, when you get off the cruise, you then have to take that lovely little pink pill to make you poop again. But like that's truth fact.
Probably before already. You wouldn't wait that long, but
Yeah, I've been on like two, maybe three cruises in my life, and I'm like, I don't ever want to do this again. And then I get suckered in, and it's so much
do it
fun.
again.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I know. But
totally get it.
got the pink pill in advance. If you're young and you're a CF and you've never heard of the pink pill before, wait until
Cool.
child rearing years. Um, but that's what it's like for our children with a feeding tube is that they get
Mhm.
every 3 hours, they're constantly refilled or they're on an overnight feed. And I struggle with explaining to physicians, well, I can't ask them to eat more orally if you keep refilling them like from like
Mhm.
a tube perspective. So
Yes.
how do I have that conversation? How do I educate them on that?
And that's I think one of the hardest things, right? I think getting them in the boat and saying like, so this kid, I mean, there are kids who have a tube because it's a medical necessity. They're not, I mean, we're not talking about those children, right? I mean, they if they know they have to be in a tube, that's. But other ones, when you see that they're progressing and they've met everything, and but the oral motor skills are there, everything is working, they're ready, but you can't. I mean, it's like if you already had a big dessert and you have another one, you just can't, and they lose the sense of their own like self-regulation of their appetite.
Mhm. Mhm.
Everything is on the clock, and so the weight is artificial. So a lot of times I hear like, but they're gaining weight, but, and I was like, but it's artificial, it's not their normal weight because it's all pushed through the tube. And you want them, I mean, the goal should be to be off it, right?
Yes.
So the second the situation is under control, the kid is medically stable, and we always say the earlier the better. The second the physician says, medically stable, not medically indicated anymore, let's bring him back to a typical feeding. Let's bring him back to the family. What I sometimes say is like, do you know what it's like for a family to have a child with a feeding tube? How it impacts their family unit? How it impacts the caregiver's reality? Like family meals, going out to a restaurant, meeting families, playing with other kids, meals at school. So that's all
Mhm.
impacted. And sometimes I get him over that kind of with that narrative to say like, you really look at the reality and look at the research. I'm like, I can show you the research of what it looks like when a kid has a feeding tube and how it impacts the family mealtime routine. Actually, I did a research on that topic. So
Wait,
it's like,
where can we read it? Where is it?
it's in the Australian Journal of Occupational Therapy in 2018. So yeah, it's there, and it looks at the impact of feeding tubes on family mealtime routine, and it shows very clearly is that we need this is a problem. I can't leave my house. Help me.
I just had an idea and I need to connect you to a friend because I've got an idea for our university clinic. I just became clinic coordinator at a speech pathology
Hmm,
program here in South Carolina, and thank
congratulations.
you. I don't know what I'm doing. It's terrifyingly cool. But like I have
Don't you
we're
love that when you get to that point and it's like, I get to do this?
do we and not to toot our own horn, but our little bitty Francis Marion University is setting up the very first pediatric feeding clinic on a university campus in South Carolina
That's
history.
fantastic.
I know, but I have an idea
Wow.
for a research project and I need to connect you to a friend to see if we can make that happen. So big,
Yep, I'm
big,
there. I love
yes,
research. You
yes.
know,
Okay, so you mentioned a key word. You said medical stability.
Mhm.
And that's where, y'all, we get kiddos that need feeding tubes for a litany of reasons. I'm
Right.
thinking of one sweet baby girl that I've worked with for the last year. She has uh, she has DeGeorge's 22q11 point
Mhm.
two, also known as velocardiofacial syndrome. So she had trichology, a fillet, a VSD. Um, she's had all of these cardiac conditions. Also, for lack of a better phrase, she was born without a functioning swallow reflex.
Wow.
And so the first 3 years of her life, she was 100% tube fed,
Mhm.
and she slowly started engaging in taste. And then a year ago, I came on board, and because one of my girlfriends asked me to come help with the case, and I came on board, and we had to first get her gut to a point that it would accept actual food and not synthetic formula, but like,
Mhm. Yeah, you
food.
have to prepare the gut. Yeah,
Yes,
sure,
yes,
absolutely.
yes. And
Yeah.
so what has progressed over the last year is this really cool process where once we found a plant-based food, actual blenderized tube feed that worked for her, she started getting hungry.
Excellent.
But she also has had her final cardiac procedure. She's being monitored for one more. And so she's hit medical stability, and we're starting to cut back on her formula feeds. But my question is, what is the medical stability protocol look like? Like, what makes a person a candidate for a feeding tube dependency wean? What is
Yes.
it called? Am I calling it the right thing? Feeding tube
Well,
dependency wean? What's the word?
besides tube weaning, and then you can, I mean, everybody who comes through a door has a tube dependency, right? I mean,
Yes.
it doesn't take very long to develop it. The
Yes.
family has it, the child has it, the grandmother has it, whoever who is working with that kid or is close proximity. So it's always decided. So we have a medical team, right? So our pediatrician, and we are, as part of the assessment, so we are asking for letters from physicians, the last gastroenterology visit. So we want physicians to be on board, and we closely monitor it. And that's the thing, because the pediatrician looks into, we call it the ticket. It's like an online, it's not a blog or a chat. It's like an online platform where families communicate with us daily. And she's there, right? And so she's always like in contact with the physician that's local. So stable means like we're looking at too, like what kind of medication is the kid getting? You know, we have a lot of kids with kidney issues or heart defects. So yeah, nephrology, exactly. So we get all those kids and we really monitor them closely. So stability is really looking at, we're going to do a little bit of reduction. How do we respond? So since we are there 24/7, there in quotation mark, but we are in communication, we can do that. So that's kind of the first step in looking at medical stability. And if the doctor says, this child still has 3-4 surgeries coming up, we might say, let's start with taste, but let's start the wean after the surgeries are done and the kid is more stable and can really focus on eating, because you also need to be in the right state to do it.
Yes. Okay. So
Yeah.
when y'all do the wean, is
Mhm.
it seriously like you have it for like 3 days or like have the tube feeds for a week? Is that how that works? Because that's so cool.
So let me see how to best explain it, because we do it all the time. You're like, how am I going to explain this? So every it's like, I don't know. So the parents they kind of have to do a protocol, like they write down what they're offering, what the child is tasting, what the child is taking, and then daily we might do a daily adjusted tube wean. We might do tube protocol, or we might do it weekly, depending what the kid is giving us. So it's
Mhm.
very much child led. So when
Nice.
somebody asks me, like, so what is the protocol? Like every week something new or every 5 days? I'm like, I can't tell you, because it depends on your child. And as you know, if you push a child too fast, they're gonna resist. They're gonna like, no way, I'm not gonna do it. So we monitor the weight for sure, and we monitor the comfort level of the caregiver. So there's a lot of components that the team members daily evaluate. So this it's kind of a daily process. You never know what's
Mhm.
going to happen, what the kid's going to give us to work
Okay.
with. Yeah.
So you mentioned some of the professionals that are part of the team
Mhm,
that y'all
mhm.
have within your team. You have the physician, the occupational pediatrician, yep, occupational therapist, physical therapist. You never said speech therapist.
We have a speech therapist, but he works only in the clinic on the ground.
Okay,
Mm,
okay.
yeah, so not for the telehealth component.
Wait, it's
Mhm.
a guy. It's a male speech
Yes,
therapist. Oh,
yes.
I love this even more. There's so
Yeah,
few of them.
mhm.
It's delightful.
Yeah, no, they do exist,
I know.
but they're also very few in Germany, so
Sweet. Okay.
yes,
And
and we have a nutritionist too. So a nutritionist is also that's on call and gets pulled in when the need is there. So we have those as well.
okay.
Mhm.
So you also mentioned that you work with the local community team.
Mhm. Yes.
So how do you do like a peer to peer, like the PT picks up the phone and talks with the PT or the O? How
Mhm.
does that work?
So we believe in transparency. So everything kind of goes to the same platform that the parent or the caregiver is communicating with us.
Oh, I
So the,
love this.
the therapist will log on to, will get access. This also the family has to allow it. We don't do nothing behind the family's back. So they know exactly who we're communicating with. It's very transparent. So even the therapist to therapist conversation, the caregiver can read it. Sometimes we had some speech language pathologists, she's like, I do a lot of this. What do you think? Should I stop? Should I shift it? What is your philosophy? And we work well with them. So, and then she would upload a video so I can see the session. I would say, maybe do a little bit, back up a little bit. You're offering too much. Make it more child autonomy, give the kid more control. And that works well. And again, the caregiver can see everything, it's transparent. So all the communication, and I can see what the pediatrician communicates with the caregiver. Everything is transparent. So nothing is kind of behind closed doors.
I love this. Okay, so there's Feeding Matters is like how we met, right? And I'm a
Yes,
huge
yes.
proponent of Feeding Matters because y'all, I know I've told you before to go out and volunteer with Feeding Matters, but this is why it's a family caregiver driven program. There are other pediatric feeding disorder organizations, but they do not allow caregivers and family members to be part of the organization, which is appalling for lack of a
I
better
agree.
phrase.
Mm-hmm,
Yes,
mm-hmm.
because we are supposed to use evidence-based practice, which is it's parent coaching, parent engagement drives everything. And
Yes.
so y'all, Feeding Matters is doing it right. Also, wait, did you see that they just got the PFD ICD-10 code or ICD code approved?
Yes. Isn't
Yes.
that exciting?
Oh my
Oh
gosh.
my, I
Oh,
know. That was a battle. So I'm so excited. I cannot wait for to actually use it.
yes.
It's
Next, I think it's October. I think we get to use it next month, and I'm gonna I cannot wait. I'm gonna be the nerdy SLP that like updates all of her reports to get the correct ICD-10
oh,
code on
that's
there.
so important. It's so and
Yes.
it really reflects it so much better,
Mhm.
and I really hope that there's more coverage out there. So of
Yes, yes, this
course
is
we all want. Yep.
huzzah. Okay, so all right, so did we cover all of the professionals? Wait, I did have a question. Psychology. What about
Yes.
psychology? How
Oh
does
yeah.
that
So
play in?
mhm. Because, well, if you think about it too, is the parents come in, they might have trauma, they've been through everything. So the psychologist works really closely into empowering the parents. The psychologists, they're amazing. Like they can observe a feeding situation and they know exactly this is the cue the child's giving. How are you responding? They give lots of feedback, positive feedback. They give security
Mhm.
and it's their sounding board for families, for caregivers. So it's just really an integral part. I think what the beauty is of this feeding team and NoTube is that you have to you have to have all those components to make it work
Mhm.
because we work so hand in hand. And so, yeah, that's you have to have them.
Yeah. We I had Dr. Rob Dempster from
Mhm.
a major children's hospital on, and he was talking to us about how he engages families in working through their trauma to help with the
Yeah.
children. And that's something that I have seen, especially over the last 6 months, is not only caregiver burnout, but
Mhm.
clinician burnout, because
Huge.
we're
Yes.
we're all stressed and stretched to the max, right?
Exactly. Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so when you're engaging with a family, I humbly suggest, if you hit a point in your therapeutic journey with the child or with their family and you start having, I'm trying to find the right word here, antagonistic
Mhm.
views, or you find yourself dreading going to that session, then you need to walk away, because your
Yes.
therapeutic presence and whatever you have going on in your own world is going to inhibit the potential outcomes for that child and for the rest of that clinical team.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah, and you can, as part of that team, you yourself can talk to the psychologist and
Mhm.
say, "Hey, I've got this baggage. The family's told me these things, or I'm observing these actions."
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, and that's the same for us too. Even though, like, I'm in the US and they're in Graz, Austria, we have our supervision meetings. I can say, this family, like, what's going on? Having these feelings, what's happening? And they can, I mean, since all it's transparent, right? So the psychologist who's on the team with me can say, like, I don't know what's going on. Maybe let me take over for a couple of days and let me see and then you come back in. So, and I mean, you're human, right? When you have that,
mhm,
you have to be aware of that, because you're thinking about the therapeutic use of self. You bring always yourself into the therapy session too. You use
mhm.
who you are, to build rapport with the families, to do all that. And if that's no longer working for you, really you gotta look inward and figure out what's going on and ask for that help and support.
Did did you know I have never taken a class as a speech pathologist where they talk about therapeutic use of self? I have only picked that up.
What?
I never covered. Honest to God, never covered. I know
It's huge.
therapeutic, it's huge, but therapeutic presence and therapeutic use of self
Mm-hmm.
is the one of my girlfriends was like, "Michelle, you're a clean, dirty hippie. How have you never heard of this?" And I was like, "I don't know. It's never been in my language." But OTs know about that. So
Yes.
can you talk to us ever so briefly about, what do you explain therapeutic use of self and therapeutic presence? Can you, like,
It's
yes.
yeah. I always see it as you go kind of on eye level with the people you're working with, right? So you're coming in, and I have my history and my narrative and my experience, and I pull from that just a little bit to build that alliance. I can say, even if it's just another experience. And I had somebody who, for example, happens to be from a similar background than I was from. I grew up in East Germany, for example. So we
Wow.
connected that way. So it's like, oh, I didn't know. And then you build that rapport. Or, I have a daughter who was a really picky eater. So I can go with you on that level, right? So, and that's important, because you don't come in as the expert up there, because if you bring in yourself, the person that you're working with, your caregiver, the person across from you or next to you, will bring their self in, and together you have that unit, then you can work from. And but you have to have this, and I think it's the most powerful tool in your toolbox, honestly.
Yes. E-
Yeah.
I have found that when, you know how when you're having an off day,
Yeah.
and we're all entitled to having off days.
Absolutely, it's part of
When
who you are.
Yes,
Yep.
but when you come into a session, you have to conscientiously, I view it like taking off a jacket. Like, if I have
Hmm.
stress on me, before I physically walk into that room or turn on the camera for a Zoom session, I have to, like, take all of that off,
Yes.
because otherwise my negative energy will
Hmm.
inhibit my ability to reach out and engage on the level that I need to.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah, that's it's same process. I mean, it goes through even like what language you use, all those things to really build that. And I keep saying rapport, but it's like this relationship, right? You're building this relationship because you wanna be you wanna be part of this, and especially if you do telehealth, that's really important because half of your body is cut off. If you just feel like, I'm like, man, I have only this, and I talk with my hands all the time,
yes.
and if I do that, the camera's going to freeze. So I've been like, be careful with my hands, and it's just you have to use other ways to build that rapport, that connection. And when we work with the parents, it is not video interaction; it's all written. So you have to bring even more. Like, how do you do therapeutic use of self in only written format? So that's
I don't know if I could do that. I got to be honest. I don't.
it's practice. It's practice
And
for
spell
sure.
check. I'm a terrible speller, so I hope to God whatever program you use has a spell check.
It does a spell check, but it's just the thing, like remembering when they say that, oh, we're gonna go, we try to go out to a restaurant, and you're like, okay, so now it's been 3 days since they said that. I might check in on that. So that's how you build it too. It's like, so how was your restaurant visit, by the way, last week? And they're like, how do you remember? So those kinds of things, and just be a little human. Be human. I think
Yes.
that's important. Yeah.
I like the humor part of the human is what makes me the
Yes.
happiest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have that too. And sometimes you ask for videos, and I had one video, it was so great. So the kid played with the food and touched it all for the first time. It was awesome, was so excited. I was like, what's different? And then the camera angle shifted a little bit. Well, the little dachshund was sitting next to the feed. So the kid happily. So you kept seeing the little dog jumping in the background, catching all the things, but it was hilarious. And so I just said, this is, and I just wrote a little message to the dog, and I said, just thank you, and maybe and put in your request for the meal next time. Have a little bit less sausage, so maybe a little bit more of that other stuff. So and you make that humor. You've got to. Life's too serious,
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. This is we have family game night as a family, and my boys got this terrible game where you put water. It's a little toilet, right? And it has a roll of
Oh,
like toilet
yeah.
paper, and you spin it, and then you pretend to flush the toilet, and it randomly squirts water at you. Well,
Oh
it's the
God.
world's worst game invented, and my boys love it. So we're laying on the living room floor, taking turns getting shot in the face. Our big German Shepherd black chow, we call him Chewbacca. Chewbacca walks right
Oh,
over, bowls
fabulous.
between us, and proceeds to drink the water out of the toy toilet. And I was like,
Yep.
yep.
Yep, I have seen dogs walking through the play picnic and having a little lick of that puree. But and then what happens?
The
The
kid does it.
caregiver, yeah, the kid does it, goes on the tummy and licks it, and parents are laughing. And when you hear, and I said that's the beauty of this work, when you hear the laughter
Yes.
from that is like, oh my gosh, you can pay me to do it. This is amazing. This is why we're doing this, because that moment is precious.
Yes.
Precious. Mhm.
Yeah. There's Dr. Kay Toomey with the SOS
Yeah.
approach. She said something profound. She was like, therapy has to be positive. She was like, we have
Mhm.
to tiptoe into the water. You don't teach a kid to swim by throwing them in the pool. And I was like,
But
well,
put them
honestly,
in the pool.
I was thrown in a pool, but like, country backwoods learning style. But for the children that we're working with, you tiptoe in, it has to be a positive. So
Mhm.
please critically look at your sessions, y'all. If you find that your session is negative to neutral, then you need to take a break and find out where's the process improvement plan. It needs to be positive to neutral. Our sessions cannot be neutral to negative. And I feel real strongly in that. Okay. So, the reality of tube feeding in
Mhm.
social context. You just talked about how family mealtime routines and you wanted to go out to dinner, and you told us that this research article is is it the Australian Journal?
Australian. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
And yeah, go ahead.
No. I was going to say, so tell us all about this.
No, so it's like this interesting fact because I saw, so you see your families in the clinic, and I was like, okay, well, they're all saying, no, we're going to eat together, we're planning all this thing, and it's like, well, are you actually doing it? And it's like, no. So what's the breakdown? What's happening in the home, right? So what happens when you take all the advice you get and you take it into the home? And nothing. They're like, we have a broken dinner schedule, our table is not really good. So they had to get a different table. They put hooks in the wall to hang the feeding bag on. So they were very, they're trying to figure it out, but they could not eat together because the feeding schedule didn't match up with the family eating schedule. So it was totally off. And then the kid didn't know what to do. And, but what they said, a lot of them said was that, when we first got the feeding tube, and we really needed some more time to find out, kind of get the idea, this is our new normal, some time to adjust. So very quickly they were thrown into do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, follow all those advices, and the caregiver said, like, that was way too fast. So I need some time to adjust. I want somebody who problem solves with me, how to integrate this into the family. And that being said, the families I interviewed were families where the feeding tube is going to be a definite component of their child's life. Those are children with a diagnosis of cerebral palsy, to an extent where we knew that there is no weaning possibility. But I still wanted to see, okay, what can we do to enhance family mealtime, family unit? And so that's lots of problem solving, and that and advocacy.
Yes.
That should be like the therapists who come into the home. They're great advocates, knowing where to turn to, helped us to negotiate, stepping outside of our protective walls of the home, and, go to the restaurant, have a family meal outside with other family members or friends, and kind of recreating, kind of getting those routines back that you had before the child got a feeding tube. So there's a lot of work that still needs to be done, I think, to help those families take that step.
Well, I'm trying to compose my thoughts. I feel very strongly that we need to engage in quality of life considerations for our little
Absolutely.
ones that are always going to be feeding tube dependent. And
Mhm.
so I have I treat the least of these. So in my neck of the woods, if you need me as your therapist, you don't necessarily want me as your therapist, because that means that you have all the things, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And for a long time it's hard on a heart until you realize that, like, this is what I've been called to do, and I love it. So when you have cases like that are will require feeding tubes for the rest of their lives, you really need to talk with the physician and make sure that within your documentation you're discussing quality of life pleasure feeding. And there is a role for that in the pediatric realm. That's a hard component to process, especially when most people view quality of life, like palliative care measures, as like an adult
Right.
geriatrics component. But
Mhm.
that's some of these babies that we see, babies, toddlers, children, especially our ones that have cancer or have rare genetic conditions. They need our support even more so that they can have a happy mealtime.
Yes, absolutely. And something that we try to with in a clinic in Austria is, like, we have kids, for example, that come into a program that might just be partially weaned.
Yeah,
So when
that's an
so when they
option.
look, yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely. So, for example, it's like, I would love to just be on night feeds. How can we figure this out, that we can have a day meal schedule that we can all eat together and just supplement, or, those kinds of things. So yes, that's also an option, because for some kids, they just might always have to have the tube, but let's optimize it, right? Let's use it to its best ability, so that we still have the quality of life piece in there, because those kiddos, they they're not living in a vacuum, right? They have all the people around them. So we need to make sure that that is also taken into consideration. Yeah.
Mm, mm. I I have one little mommy. Um, it made me giggle. Like the little guy that I work with, he has a GJ tube, he has a trach, we have all the things, and we
Yeah.
worked up to the point now where she can. I mean, when I first started with him, I couldn't even. I was the first therapist that could sit at the table adjacent to, and by adjacent to, we're still talking like 5 feet away, to his
Yeah.
hospital bed in his living room, and the mommy told me this past week that she's like, I can wipe food on his lips, and he curls his little lips in and licks it off. And it's that moment is huge. I mean, he will not bring his own hands to his mouth, which is why he won't. I mean, autonomy, I understand, but like he just
Right.
could not, right?
Right.
But
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, to go from where we were to where he is now, like, yes, he will always have that. But that means when she's cooking, she can put whatever she's prepared in her
Yeah.
little like fancy blender. And
Mhm.
then, he can, or she can dip her finger in the sauce. And then
Mhm.
he's partaking of that. And that's just like, yay.
Like, beautiful. But if you think about how much is feeding part of your identity, right? I mean, you have this
Yes.
imagination, I'm going to cook, and that's socially sanctioned, right? You get feedback from society how well you feed your children, and being, yeah,
Or you get
it's
shamed, dude.
exactly. But people have opinions, and they don't shy away of telling those opinions. But so, just providing that piece of identity back to the parent, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, yeah, if it's just, and I'm saying if, and I shouldn't say if, it's, tastes on the mouth, being able to, sometimes it's just being able to tolerate the smell of food so you can sit with the family at the
Hmm.
table, right? Or,
Hmm.
having, yeah, tastes or whatever it may be. Or, some kids they're just going to drink. They're not going to chew. That's just how they take that's their intake, right?
Yes.
But but they can take their drink at the table with everybody else. So that's huge. So we think we need to kind of keep that in mind too, like this whole identity piece of who those people are. So yeah.
So, I don't think you know this, but I have a special needs brother-in-law,
Oh, I
and
did not know that.
yes, Uncle Matthew Monster, and
Mhm.
okay, Uncle Matthew Monster is my joyful hot mess. Um, Uncle Matthew Monster has autism, CP, microcephaly, cortical vision impairment,
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah.
he, yep, and so also it's if memory serves correct, I believe that this is Cortical Vision Impairment Awareness Month. So,
Oh, it is.
yes,
Ooh,
yes,
yeah. I'm
right?
trained to work. Yeah, I love working with that population. So,
Yes, that's
yeah,
our Uncle Matthew,
great,
but his
awesome.
function fed is fed is fed is fed. And
Hmm.
so Uncle Matthew, when he goes to chew, he open mouth chews and like you can see
Yep,
it, right? But he can't close lip because he has hypertrophy of his adenoids and he has to breathe through his mouth, right?
right.
So
Makes sense.
yes, exactly. So folks, when we're looking at safest, least restrictive diet, it may not be what we would consider historically socially acceptable at mealtime to chew with one's mouth open, right?
Hmm.
But are they safely, least restrictively getting nourishment? And is the family enjoying themselves? If you have checked those boxes, then walk away and give grace. That's
Absolutely.
that's a hard sell, but
Mhm, mhm,
yeah.
mhm. But it's the idea of participation, right? I mean, we as OTs, and I'm sure you as SLPs do the same thing. You want them to participate. You want them to be
Yes.
partake in the social event,
Yes.
and you have to just step away from this like mouth closed. They have to eat this food at that time, and like, you know what? They're here. They're participating. They're enjoying themselves. Win, great, win-win. I'm
Yes.
happy. Fabulous. Move on.
I
It's
had I I had one kid that her favorite drink was spicy V8 juice, and
Oh,
the
yes.
And she wanted to drink that for like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And the mom started laughing. And I was like, what's so funny? She goes, I'm just telling you that in like 20 years, when we're going out for Bloody Marys, she is
Mhm.
going to thrive. I was like, okay.
Oh, it's funny. But you bring actually an interesting point because a lot of kids, when they're weaned off the feeding tube, I don't know if you've seen this too, they tend toward like really like intense flavors.
I
So
have a theory. I have a theory on that.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Sorry. Go continue. And then I'll word vomit my theory.
yeah. So absolutely, probably right. Interrupt me. So we have kids with like ranch dressing. That's the first thing they'll taste and they'll take in, and they're just like, "Give me the flavor. Give me like pickle juice." And it was like, "Wow!" And they're like, "What?" I'm like, "No, this is like their senses are waking up."
Yes.
So it's yeah, absolutely. And but again, it's like this notion of what is typical, right? So what is
Mhm.
typical food? What is typical baby or stages food? It's like ranch dressing. If that's what they're taking, I am very happy. We're starting. We're starting because that was the hardest thing is to get it from the table to the mouth. We're starting. We've got this. We can go from places from here. So yeah. So what's your theory? Bring it on.
Okay. All right. So this is great. Have you ever read the book Gulp? It's
I have not.
oh my god, it's amazing. So it's
Go
Gulp.
to my reading list.
It's written by Mary Roach. It has it's absolutely scientific based, but she definitely has an adult sense of humor. So just FYI. And I read that and then I countered that with like all of the other research that I've read, right? So here's my theory. We develop the sense of flavor sweet, salt, sour, bitter, umami, and it comes in that stage, right? But it's not
Right.
actually our taste buds on our tongues that change. It's the olfactory, gustatory cortexes in our brains that evolve and mature, right?
Correct.
And then we lose them in reverse
Mhm.
unless we have had a neuroatypical component.
Oh,
So
yeah.
and so and another factor is that our odor receptors and in our nasopharynx, if you have a child that has enlarged adenoids or enlarged palatine tonsils, they become obligatory mouth breathers. But
Mhm.
you have 350 to I think it was 400 is what they said in that book odor receptors in your around your adenoids in your nasopharynx. So if those are blocked or the air particulates cannot get to them because you're mouth breathing and you're not actually
Mhm.
bringing like retronasal olfaction, then that will impede your sense of taste. And it's not your tongue, it's the other components. And what I have found is that a lot of my babies that have tube feeds are neuroatypical, so their cortical structures are different. So in my head, it makes sense that their respiratory cycle is different, their cortical structures are different. It makes sense that they want all those strong flavors. Because
Yes.
right,
Yeah,
it's
I can go there. Totally.
that's my weird theory.
Sounds very evidence, though. I mean, I can hear
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
It's yeah.
yes.
Well, but yeah, it makes sense. And it's really across the board. I have yet to see one that takes just a bland. Give me the bland. I'm like, no, there needs to be some kind of kick in there, some kind of thing that kind of gets them going. And yeah, it might just be that ranch dressing or that spicy VA juice, whatever it takes, whatever it takes.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I got a kid who would not eat a hot cheese sandwich, which was literally grilled cheese, by the way, but he called it a hot cheese sandwich. But he will have smoked salmon with capers on Sunday morning with us. And I'm like, we're the weirdest child in the world.
But and I think what's interesting is too is like sometimes like those kids they identify themselves through what they're eating, right? And
Mhm.
so when we have older kids too, when they're feeding tube for a very very long time, and then they are so hooked. It's like this is like they're dependent on their feeding tube, but also with their identity, and it's that's they get scared sometimes, and so we
Mhm.
have to give them a different identity, a different piece, because they think I'm only special because I have this special
Tube.
thing in my belly. They have the tube, right? And we have a kid who says, well, I am hungry, feed my belly mouth. And he really pointed to his, that was his mouth, was his belly, his tube. So we worked on trying to find him a different identity for him, and his was eating weird foods. That's what it was. I'm like, hey, that's perfect.
Uh,
Bring on the capers and the salmon. He was, yeah, I'll take it.
Wait,
But
what?
you have to keep that in mind.
Yes, there's a guy that travels the world. He's a short, round, bald man, and I cannot remember his name. And he travels the world and eats weird food. Y'all should watch that show. Who is that? He's a chef. I can't remember. It's
Oh,
um
I can't remember it either, but I know who you're talking about.
I know, and
Yeah,
he's
but yep.
yeah, that
And
go ahead,
But
I'm sorry.
but it's like this idea, and it's just like, yeah, just give him a new identity, and he totally is like, yeah, that's who I am. And then he started like putting things, cooking for his family and combining weird things because that's what he liked, and he made the transition. He's done. No more feeding tube, and he was okay. They had a party, and everything. The feeding tube was gone, and had a goodbye party and a celebration and welcome to his new self. The person who eats weird stuff, but eating.
Okay. I did the Google. It's Bizarre Foods with Andrew
Yeah,
Zimmerman, and he needs
yes,
to see
I
that
love
guy.
food.
That would
Yeah,
be yes. Oh my gosh, that
he
makes
can
me so
be that
happy.
guy. Yeah,
Yes,
it was fabulous to see, and the parents totally embraced that new role. I mean, they absolutely went on that train with him. That was like no discussion. It was great. It was really great to see.
but see, that's what we do, and I can hear the joy. You have to come back. Can we do a part 2? This has been
Of course we can.
my face hurts from smiling. This is so much fun. Okay, wait. We do have to get okay. We have to
Yeah,
talk ever so briefly. Y'all,
sure.
you can reach out to Dr. Marion. Your website, it's notube.com.
Correct. Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
And you. Yep.
And is it covered by insurance? Because I know that will be the next worry.
That would be the next worry. So we're working on that because the company is based in Austria. So whenever you go treatment outside of the country, you run into that issue. We had one insurance company who's covered us for the net coaching. That's our online program, but we're working on that. So a lot of families do it through fundraising. That's just, and the cost is cheaper if you compare it to going inpatient, things like that.
Yeah.
So there is the cost comparison, and we'll give you all the letters you need to submit to insurance. We have all the codes, so and we'll help you. We advocate for you, and so but we're still in the process. There's so many insurance companies in this country, so
Yes, it's really hard.
it's really hard. But yeah, we're aware of it, and we're there to support you with letters.
Feeding Matters does have scholarships to help offset the cost. And Erin Forward, my co-host, because her and I do every 4th episode together. Erin and one of the lovely ladies that she works with just founded Forward. Is it Millick Forward or Forward Millick Foundation? And they it's a foundation specifically for holistic PFD evaluation and treatment. And
Awesome.
so
That's
I
great to know.
I know. And so I think that they had already raised like $20,000 or $30,000. And it will go towards helping families offset the cost for holistic evaluations and treatments. So y'all just, check it out, because I'm also, she was my former student. Erin was my student like years ago, and I'm just so proud of her. I'm like,
Phenomenal.
isn't
Yeah.
it great when they grow up and they're like doing life and just giving to the world? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Mentors are amazing. I mean, I wouldn't be here without my incredible mentor that I had for
Yes.
feeding. So,
Yes.
that those people you need those in your life. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I'm gonna cry now, dadgummit. Okay. All right.
You're
So,
welcome.
yeah, thank you. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so I try really hard not to cry in these episodes, but like I'd say every 3rd one I do. Now, if someone wants to reach you, it's best to go to notube.com.
Yep. And you can see, like, I'm under, I think, team. And what will happen too is that we offer a free evaluation. So there's a link in the corner. You click on it and you'll meet with our lovely Eva Kashishnik. And she does all the free evaluations. And you have a conversation about the program. If you want to talk to me, my email is on there. It's just Marion Russell, marion.russell@notube.com. Pretty straightforward.
Make sure you say no tube and don't put an S on there, because if you put
Yes,
an S on there, it takes you to a tire company.
yes,
So,
yes, exactly. Yep.
yes.
So definite. Yeah, yeah, you can find me there for sure. And yeah, I welcome emails anytime, It's just, I love to hear from people.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Well, then let me switch this over to questions. Hold on 1 second. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Hang on. Feeding Matters guides system-wide changes by uniting caregivers, professionals, and community partners under the Pediatric Feeding Disorder Alliance. So what is this alliance? The Alliance is an open access collaborative community focused on achieving strategic goals within 3 focus areas: education, advocacy, and research. So who is the Alliance? It's you. The Alliance is open to any person passionate about improving care for children with a pediatric feeding disorder. To date, 187 professionals, caregivers, and partners have joined the Alliance. You can join today by visiting the Feeding Matters website at www.feedingmatters.org. Click on PFD Alliance tab and sign up today. Change is possible when we work together. That's a wrap, folks. Once again, thank you for listening to First Bite, fed, fun, and functional. I'm your humble but yet sassy host, Michelle Dawson, the All Things Peds SLP. This podcast is part of a course offered for continuing education through speechtherapypd.com. Please check out the website if you'd like to learn more about CEU opportunities for this episode, as well as the ones that are archived. And, as always, remember, feed your mind, feed your soul, be kind, and feed those babies.